This is MLS, and this is MLS Cup Week. Oh, that feels so good to say. For the first time in the league's 29 years, the New York Red Bulls and the LA Galaxy will meet in MLS Cup. Two MLS Cup originals. I'm Jillian Sakovits with you today. Some of my favorite people in the whole wide world. We've got the armchair analyst, Matt Doyle, guy who played for both the New York Red Bulls and the LA Galaxy, Sasha Kleshton, and four-time MLS Cup finalist, Taylor Twellman. Guys, it's our season finale.
Taylor, is that a good intro or a bad intro?
Sasha, sorry, the audio was bad. I couldn't hear it. I'm assuming she introduced me as the Jim Kelly of MLS. So
That's right.
I appreciate that.
That's many more finals than the rest of us combined. I just want to point that off. Taylor, you were on the call in Los Angeles. Sasha Kleshton was pitch side. Sash, did you invite TT to spend the night at the Kleshton household?
I don't have a guest bedroom that can fit his head through the doorway, but we spent some time together out in LA, and I got to be honest, Jill, I've never seen LA Galaxy Stadium as electric as it was last Saturday night. I can't wait for the MLS Cup final.
Agreed.
Well, good news, guys.
It was really good, really good.
We'll get into that more in just a moment. Good news, guys, in a couple of hours or so, we're all getting back on a flight to head out to Los Angeles. The final is set, and here is how we got here. 2-seed LA Galaxy rolled past the Colorado Rapids and Minnesota United, and then this past weekend in the Western Conference final, a 1-0 performance at home to beat the Seattle Sounders. For the 7th-seed New York Red Bulls, a little less straightforward of a path. They had to take down the reigning champions, the Columbus Crew. They beat New York City FC on the road in a derby, and then they took down 4th-seed Orlando City. And here we are, MLS Cup. It will all be free on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. Our coverage begins 90 minutes prior to kick, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then Jake Zivin, Taylor Twellman, myself will be on the call. You can catch the studio crew will be on site for MLS Countdown and MLS Wrap-Up. It is going to be quite the show, so make sure that you tune in. The LA Galaxy, this is the most storied franchise in MLS history. They are going for a league best 6th title. Saturday, Sasha, is going to mark 10 years to the day since the Galaxy last raised an MLS Cup. You've got names like David Beckham, Robbie Keane, Landon Donovan that all come to mind. Finally, a chance at a 6th title. You played for this club. What does it mean for the LA Galaxy to be back in a championship?
Well, I think it means everything, and to a lot of people. First and foremost, the fans. They have a hand in this. You know, they walked out on this club in 2023. They forced some changes from the top, and they got it. They wanted something to believe in again. They wanted something to be excited about when they came to the stadium every week. And boy, did they get it, because the LA Galaxy's been the most entertaining team in the league this year. High-flying attack, scoring goals. The people who work in the front office, I know personally, my brother has been there for about 13 years now. He's been through the highs of winning MLS Cups and the lows, and I see how proud he is of all the work that they put in to get back to MLS Cup. And I also think about Greg Vanney, who played for the LA Galaxy, who lost MLS Cups as a player of the LA Galaxy, and he wanted redemption to be remembered for as a winner as part of the LA Galaxy. So I'm happy for him too. This club feels back, and it's exciting.
Sasha, it's a great point, obviously, about the fans, just because it's been interesting to see 10 years. I was on the field 10 years ago to the day when I handed that trophy to Phil Anschutz and Don Garber, and if you would have told me that day that they would miss the playoffs 5 of the next 8 years, I would have said there's no way that happens. There's no way that the legacy with Omar Gonzalez and Landon Donovan and Robbie Keane and all of those players in 14, when they beat the Revolution for that 5th trophy, you were then going to tell me that Seattle would have more wins than them, Seattle would have more points. There's no way anyone would have believed it on the day. And I think it makes it a little bit more special for the fans, but also for the ownership. You got to remind everyone, LAFC came into this league with a bang. And they reminded everyone that, hang on a minute, there is a piece of the pie in MLS in Los Angeles, and maybe the Galaxy were resting on their laurels too much. And so now it's been this resurgence. I think Will Kuntz has done a fantastic job. I think Greg Vanney deserves a ton of credit, because last year with the suspensions and penalties and the inability to grow on their team, he had to have belief that going into the final year of his contract, it was going to turn into something like this. But I'll remind everyone, if they lose this MLS Cup, all of this kind of goes awry. They know they need to win their 6th MLS Cup. They know they're the favorites at home, and I think the players will react to that, and I think the crowd's going to be unlike anything we've ever seen in that building.
TT, it's a good point. They have all the pressure on this one. Even with Riqui Puig hurt, which we're going to get into in a bit, the pressure is on the Galaxy. But here's the thing. Even if they lose, I think the infrastructure is in place in that front office now for them to avoid the type of drought that you guys just described over the past 10 years. And I think that's what the real issue was after 2014, was they didn't have a decision-making apparatus in terms of how to sign players and which players to sign. They had a Rolodex. Everybody knew who the LA Galaxy were because of Beckham and Donovan and Keane, right? So they could sign big-name players, but they couldn't build a team. And that's where Will Kuntz comes in. Yep. Once the fans made their displeasure known with Chris Klein and Jovan Kirovski and that previous administration, they were able to push to bring in Will Kuntz. And when this team takes the field on Saturday, 9 of the 11 starters will be guys that Will Kuntz has brought in over the past 3 windows. That is an insanely quick turnaround for a team that looked for the better part of a decade like it was going nowhere. I think this guy was hands down the executive of the year. It's guys like signing Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsel, getting the big ones right, but also guys like John Nelson, McCarthy in net, Mickey Yamane, who's been one of the best right backs in the league. And then honestly, the cherry on the sundae was what he did in the summer window, going out and getting Carlos Garces, because they needed a center back who could run, who could put out fires in the open field. We saw him do that against Seattle in the Western Conference Final. He'll be tested that exact same way against the Red Bulls.
You have to point out that the LA Galaxy are a team that finished second from the bottom in 13th place in the Western Conference, and here they are fighting now for MLS Cup. We also have to talk about the turnaround that the New York Red Bulls have had this season, Doyle. The lowest seed to ever make a Cup championship, a 7th seed. So while their year in itself is impressive, for the fans, this goes all the way back to 1996.
Yeah, this goes back literally to the first home game in club history when the veteran Italian center back, Nicola Caricola, scored one of the silliest own goals you will ever see in this sport of ours. With seconds left in the game, turned a scoreless draw into a 1-0 loss. And the curse of Caricola was born, and there are a lot of MetroStars fans, now Red Bulls fans, who believe that this team is destined to never win MLS Cup because of that. Now, I would argue that the curse of Caricola was actually broken in 2013.
Agreed.
Because the original interpretation was that it was no trophy ever for the Red Bulls. So they finally got it, Taylor. So the curse is broken, right? So they don't have to worry about this baggage going into the game?
Listen, it's only the New York, New Jersey fan would love to do this and keep the curse alive in a real, just spiteful way. But they won 2013, in my opinion, as one of the most hated players by the New York Red Bull faithful. I think the curse was broken. I don't think they can live by that curse anymore. 10, 11 years later, that curse has been over. They're finally back in MLS Cup for first time in 16 years. And I just find it interesting that Thierry Henry, Tim Cahill, Juninho, Juan Pablo Angel, Rafa Marquez, Tim Ream, Bradley Wright Phillips, Sasha Klushtin, Tyler Adams couldn't get them to this point. Juan Pablo Angel could, excuse me. But the point is that a bunch of kids from New Jersey and New York in the metropolitan area have brought this team to this point. That's why I don't believe in that curse.
Let's ask the guy who played on the team, Sasha Klushtin. Do you believe in the curse? Did you feel it when you were there?
No, I don't believe in curses. I don't believe in voodoo. None of that. But I felt the pressure, Jill. Yep. I felt pressure when I played for the New York Red Bulls, especially at home in the playoffs, that I wanted so bad, and I know all of my teammates wanted so bad, to almost rub it in everybody's face. There is no curse. We want to win this one for the fans. We want to be the first group of guys to lift an MLS Cup for the New York Red Bulls. Unfortunately, we didn't do it. But that feeling was palpable in the stadium. It was almost like you were worried to lose. You were worried to lose instead of being confident,
Sounds like a curse, Sasha.
confident
Sounds
to
like
win.
A curse.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost been good, in my opinion, that the Red Bulls have had to play all these playoff games on the road. They don't have the pressure in any of the games to go out there and win. Of course, they want to win, but the pressure is on the home team. But they go into this MLS Cup awfully similar to the way they went into 2008 MLS Cup, where they had to go on the road, win a bunch of away games, and then they go to where? Dignity Health Sports Park in LA against a team that is much better than them, and they end up losing on the day.
I was a Metro Stars fan back in 2008, and I was there in the supporters section cheering on that team. That one felt like a hopeless cause. Zero of my friends who went with me to that game felt like the Red Bulls were going to come out with a trophy. I think it's a little bit tighter. I think there's more hope in the fan base for this game from what I've seen.
The New York Red Bulls will make the headlines that they are the underdog. And Taylor, we were just talking to Sandro Schwartz about an hour ago, and he says, keep it coming. Nobody root for us. But there is a huge asterisk when you mention that the New York Red Bulls are the 7th seed, and that is their superstar in Emil Forsberg. In the 3.5 months that he was out with the foot injury, this is a team that got 2 wins total in MLS play. They take down the defending champs. They make a run to MLS Cup. They are simply a different team with Emil Forsberg. How much do you think that this 7 seed tag is fooling people?
It's fooling a lot of people. Quite honestly, they only lost 3 of their first 16 games. Emil Forsberg was healthy in those games. Now, one of those losses was against Miami, and they were manhandled, but also one of those wins was against Miami after losing to Columbus. And so I don't think you're going out on a limb saying if Forsberg's healthy for 75-80% of the season, they're probably the 3rd or 4th seed. They're chasing Cincinnati. They're chasing Orlando City. Just because Forsberg not necessarily makes the team better, but he makes the individuals around him better, and the sum is greater because of those parts coming together. And I just think the Red Bull way is much greater if their designated player is available. But that's not stating something that is that outrageous. If you took the designated player, the highest paid player, off of any team in MLS, with how the salaries and the rosters are structured, they're going to struggle. I think this Red Bull team would have been the 3rd or 4th seed. That's why they've had to go on the road, as Sasha said. They've won 3 games. They've kept 3 clean sheets on the road. This team's different. Sandro Schwartz knows it, but he's also pushing into that mentality that nobody believes in us. Well, quite frankly, you only won 2 of your last, 20 games of the year. Why should any of us have believed you? Well, we should put more into the beginning of the season than we did, I think, Jill.
Sash, when you talk to this team, every coach, every player will tell you that there's a freedom that they're playing with. You touched on it, and you said when you were part of the New York Red Bulls, there was a lot of pressure. Do you think you can play with that freedom and play without that chip on your shoulder when you go on the road to LA in an MLS Cup final in a week that it's busy with media availability, ticket requests? Can the Red Bulls keep this freedom, this level of freedom that they've played with through the postseason?
Well, they'll need to, and I think Sandro Schwartz is going to do a good job of that, of reminding the players that they are the underdogs and they have to keep that mentality going into this place. LA Galaxy played 20 games in that stadium this year. They won 16 and they drew 4. They're unbeatable in that place right now when they have the way that they're playing and the fans behind them. Red Bulls are going to have a big job to go in there and try to disrupt the game. They need to make the game physical. And I think, yes, the way that they play, it lends them to have belief because they fight, they win duels, they get second balls, they start to control the game through physicality. That ups your level, that ups your confidence. So this team, the game is going to be closer than everybody might think, but I do still think the Galaxy are favorites.
A big reason that the LA Galaxy were so elite at home and elite this season was thanks to their superstar midfielder, Riqui Puig, who is out with an ACL injury, not only for MLS Cup, but likely the rest of the 2025 season as well. Taylor, you were on the call for that game. He has the game-winning assist to Dejan Joveljic in the 85th minute with an ACL tear. What was your reaction when you heard the news that it was official?
I knew something was wrong. You could tell the emotion on the field was not emotion of happiness. The fact that they got over the hump, the fact that they finally won a Western Conference final after not being there in that position for 10 years, as a player, and anyone that was on the field could tell it was a different type of emotion. You could see the mom and dad and that kind of emotion. You could see it from some of the teammates. It wasn't really joyous. It was something that he knew deep down something was off. Listen, I played with a couple players that finish games with ACLs. It is rare and it's odd, but you have seen it. However, to have the class that he had, he almost scored a goal if it wasn't blocked moments before that game-winning assist. He's just different. He's a real different player. He gives them an edge, especially in a hectic game, and we're going to get into this here in a moment. But I remind everyone, they played 5 games in 2024 without Riqui Puig. They won 3 of them. They drew 1. The only one they lost was the game they decided not to play Diego Fagundes, but to play Marco Reus in that position. There is a quiet confidence within this Galaxy team and within Greg Vanney that collectively they can uphold this and withstand it without Riqui Puig. And the reason why, 2 players. Paintsio and Peck give them something they didn't have last year in 2023 when they missed 5 games with Riqui Puig, and they didn't win a single one of those games. So, listen, I love the fact for an LA Galaxy perspective that it was announced on Monday, so emotionally the players are going to be prepared. They're going to be prepared tactically. They've got all that noise away from it by the time the game kicks off, versus if they were relying on it and waiting and seeing if he could go and having to deal with the emotion there. I think Greg Vanney in LA will be rightfully so confident in a way. Yes, they're going to miss Riqui Puig. He's a best 11 midfielder. I'm not an idiot. But I don't know if they're going to miss him at the level that other teams would miss a best 11 midfielder. Like a Portland Timbers missing a Vander, game over. I don't think it's game over for the Galaxy. I think Diego Fagundes and, quite frankly, Mark Delgado, who will play for Marco Reus, in my opinion. I just think there's a balance there that Greg Vanney's going to like, because Paintsio and Peck, they're just different. They haven't had those guys in a long time, and this year they've been the difference.
Yeah, balance is the right word, Taylor. And look, when Ricky's out there, they can get unbalanced. Now,
Yes,
it's
they
worth
can.
it because he's a brilliant world-class passer of the ball and chance creator. He sees passes that the only other player in this league sees him is Lionel Messi, right? Like, that's what we're talking about with his ability to weave something together. But he also takes risks that, honestly, the Galaxy at times do not need to take. Because on balance, they have so much more talent in guys like Paintsel, Peck, and Govalic up top. So sometimes you just need a guy who will connect through the middle, who will paint by the numbers, who won't turn the ball over in bad spots. And that's why they went 3-1-1 in those 5 games without Riqui Puig. They weren't overwhelming teams through midfield. They just weren't turning the ball over and giving teams gifts.
What's going to be interesting, Matt, is and Sasha, you know this, because when you go up against the Red Bulls, it oftentimes becomes 10 against 10, man for man in certain scenarios, especially when they're high pressing. That's where Riqui Puig is going to be missed. However, if you combine 2 or 3 passes and get out of the high pressure, which Diego Fagundes is very good at doing, Delgado's brilliant at filling in the gaps. Sasha, that's where Gabriel Peck and Paintsel one-on-one, they're going to be better than anything the Red Bulls have to combat that. That's why I don't think Riqui Puig is going to be that big of a miss versus if they were playing Orlando City, for that matter.
Yeah, if
Well,
we
let me
think
ask
about
you
Diego
this.
Fagundes being the replacement in the midfield, think about what you have to do when you play against the Red Bulls. Win second balls and win duels. Where did Diego Fagundes come from and play most of his career? New England Revolution. Biggest rival, the Red Bulls. He knows what it's like to play against this team. If he can win second balls and start to play forward to Peck and Paintsel, like you said, it opened things up for the Galaxy.
Diego Fagundes was on that 2014 Revs team that lost at the LA Galaxy. He did not play, so this could be a full circle moment for him come Saturday. I want to talk a little bit about Reus, because we saw Riqui Puig and Reus coming out of the dressing room to celebrate the Western Conference final, and both of them did not look good on their feet. Greg Vanney subbed Reus out at halftime. If they are without Reus as well, what should Greg Vanney's concern level be, Taylor?
Not that concerned. I mean, listen, there's some concern because you're missing 2 players, so your depth is now not the same level that it was against Seattle when you've got Delgado and Brugman and these other players coming off the bench, and Fagundes as well. So your depth becomes an issue if the game goes to 120 minutes. Absolutely, there is concern there. I will tell you this, Marco Reus is up against it to be fit for this game. He wasn't completely fit for the Seattle game. He needed an extra 36 hours to get back into the rhythm of training. They thought they had enough. He made one run around the 25th, 26th minute or around there, and you could tell he was not going to be able to come out at halftime. That's where it becomes a concern. I thought Marco Royce shouldn't have started against Seattle. I said this on MLS Countdown, and I said it in the game because he's better when the game slows down. I think against this Red Bulls team, if he's able to be fit, play him off the bench. Use him if you need to, but don't start the game with any kind of risk that an injury may happen and that you may need to use a sub in the first half. I don't think you need to. I think Fagundes, Brugman, Delgado, next to Cerrillo, I don't think you need to mess with any of that. I think the balance is there. I think the understanding is there. I think if Marco Royce is at all fit, I'm bringing him off the bench if I need him, but I'm allowing him to just be there in case when the game slows down. But the first 20, 25 minutes is going to be 1,000 miles an hour. I'm not totally sure I want to risk that hip injury that Marco Royce is dealing with.
And you know a guy like Marco Royce with his history is itching to get on this field in a final. 2-time Champions League finalist, 7-time second place in the Bundesliga with Dortmund. So he wants this final. 4 months in LA. It would be incredible if he can say he finally wins the championship. See, Taylor, I said he's a 2-time Champions League finalist. That's great.
That's the last time I will ever be mentioned with Marco Royce.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm going to do it again.
He finished second 7 times in the Bundesliga.
You both
Always
speak,
a bridesmaid.
Hey, you both speak German.
Yeah, great. Awesome. I got that going for me.
Real good. Okay, that does it for this segment. Doyle, we'll see you next year. Thanks for everything that you brought this season, and we're going to bring in Kalen Carr. Saturday will mark a league-high 7th time that MLS Cup has been played in Carson, California, the home of the LA Galaxy. And a man that played there twice is our friend, Kalen Carr. Welcome to the show. Hey, Kalen.
What's up, Jill? Good to be with you.
Nice to have you here for our This is MLS finale. I have to ask you, you played 2 finals at the LA Galaxy. Safe to say you were, the Houston Dynamo at the time, but you were more or less the New York Red Bulls coming into that building. What would your advice be for the Red Bulls in a final in LA?
Well, I think anybody that tries to tell you that MLS Cup week is just like any other game is lying to you. That's number one. And, the media attention, the celebrities around, all of the hoopla, the attention, of course, in the ones I played in too, it was David Beckham's final game in MLS. So I promise you there was no attention on the Dynamo, and frankly, we kind of liked it that way. The first year we went there, I felt like I got caught up a little bit in some of the, hoopla. You go to these fancy events. We had dinners with the owners at steakhouses. We traveled in 5 days early, so it's a lot of time in market. And then you walk out and, you sort of see the atmosphere, all the celebrities, the lights. And I didn't think we had our best game, and ultimately Landon made the difference as he did so many times. But the next year we came back, we treated it like a normal game. We flew in, we had no events, we didn't go out to any fancy dinners. We stayed at the Torrance Marriott, and we handled it exactly the way the Houston Dynamo handled things. And we came out and we said, what's the worst that can happen? We felt that last year. Let's go out and play free. Now, a lot of people don't get that second chance to be able to come out and really go for it. But I think this Red Bull team has that personality. And so I think in some ways you can almost use that attention that is working sort of against you and use that as a point of strength. And I'd expect to see that from the Red Bull team.
I just think, Kalen, you hit the nail on the head for me because you said the difference from your first game to the second. It's been 16 years since the Red Bulls have been in MLS Cup. There's not a single player other than the Americans, I would say, that may have a good understanding of what it's like. But it's going to be very interesting how they deal with that. The second part to this, and Sasha hit this in the earlier segment, the home field advantage is unlike anything I've seen in that building. And I was there for those 2 MLS Cups. I called those 2 MLS Cups where Kalen, the Houston Dynamo, lost to the Galaxy. One of those actually was a neutral site game, and they just ironically were in their home building. But when you think of what I saw, Sasha saw, Western Conference Final, it's really, really different. It is different. LAFC coming into the league has really put an onus on the Galaxy to recreate that home field advantage. I think, Kalen, when you see it, I think when others see it, it's not going to be like 2012 and 2011 when you guys were there. Hell, it's not even going to be like 2014 when the Revs were there. there's an edge to this group right now. There's an edge to the fan base, and I think the Red Bulls are going to be shocked a little bit at how much of a home field advantage there really is.
And the New York Red Bulls are used to that, winning 3 of 4 on the road to get to this point. But it's safe to say that MLS Cup, like you said, Caitlin, is completely different. The one guy on this team who is used to moments like this, guy who's played in Champions League, is Emil Forsberg, their superstar. We discussed it. We know that this is a different team when he is on the field versus when he's not. In your mind, what is it about him that changes the complexion of this team, Caitlin?
Well, it's funny, I was doing a bunch of Red Bull matches during that tough stretch in the back half of the season without Forsberg, and kept talking to Sandro Schwartz about it. And he was being diplomatic and not wanting to put it all on the missing number 10, but sometimes it really is that simple. And it's also that simple from the player's perspective of being in the dressing room. You walk out onto the pitch and you look behind you in that tunnel and you go pass by all those MLS Cups that the Galaxy have, because they make you walk past them on the way out of the tunnel. And you look back at Forsberg and you say, okay, well, we've got a guy that's been in Champions Leagues. He's been in World Cups. He's scored the big goals to advance. He's been in this moment. And that's the type of player that, in a tough moment can change the tempo, can find that moment of magic. But more than anything, I think bring that belief. It's a young squad. You guys mentioned it, all the New York, New Jersey kids on that team. But sometimes you really need that leader, that presence that Forsberg brings. And you can see the difference that this team really has that belief.
Caitlin, it's not only leadership and mentality and belief that he brings, it's also, if you look at the technical aspect of the game, he's their best player, right? He's the guy that when the game gets tough, you want to give him the ball in tight spaces because he'll keep it, he'll speed up the tempo, he'll slow down the tempo. He's the type of player that makes things click for the players around him. Dante Van Zier, Lewis Morgan, they up their level when they play with a better player. Emil Forsberg's the type of guy that I wish the Red Bulls signed when I was playing there, and I could have played a little bit deeper behind him, because you just give him the ball in between the lines. He's going to make the right decision in the final third.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have made MLS Cup, though.
Yeah, that's all right. I tried my best.
On the other side of it, the LA Galaxy, Taylor, with no Puig, how much more are you expecting from newcomer of the year, Gabriel Peck?
I'm expecting a lot. I just think the Red Bulls, and Kalen's called many a games. I called about 4 or 5. It's just, it's helter-skelter. It's all hell breaks loose. And if they win their individual battles, if they are physical, it works to their favor. If they don't, which is part of the reason why Sandro Schwartz has looked at and played 3 in the back for this reason, if you beat that initial line of pressure, there's space to be had, and you can get after it. I think the wingbacks for New York Red Bulls got their hands full. Gabriel Peck on one side, Joseph Paintsill on the other. And because of the, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say stability with Fagundes, Delgado, and Cerrillo in the midfield, now all of a sudden Paintsill and Peck can maybe be a little bit more risk-taking because they know tactically they're going to be a little bit more balanced without Riqui Puig dropping to the center backs and all of that business. I think Peck is going to be up for it. I think Peck's going to have a chip on his shoulder because Nuhu had him in his pocket for the entire game of the Western Conference Final. And I think Tolkien's got his hands full. I really do. I think he's going to get a lot of sleep nightmares, for lack of a better way to put it, because he's going to be worried about Gabriel Peck running behind him for 90 minutes.
Peck is the absolute X factor of this MLS Cup.
I agree.
Because of how aggressive the Red Bulls are and how they want to step and always put pressure on the ball, he's the type of guy that can dribble past anybody. Now, Nuhu did a very good job 1v1. John Tolkien is not Nuhu in 1v1 defending. So if he can skirt by Tolkien, now a center back has to slide out that open space, either for Peck to keep going 1v1 and drive into the final third, or space for Dejan Joveljic to run in behind. So it's going to be really interesting to see how many times Peck can get on the ball, face forward, and go at the defense.
Agreed.
It's abundantly clear that Peck and the LA Galaxy are the favorites to win on Saturday, December 7th. But let's dive a little bit deeper. I want to go position by position. So, Taylor, I'm going to start with your favorite people in the whole wide
great.
world.
I got
the
goalies and
goalkeepers.
defenders. Awesome.
Not me yet. How'd you know? The goalkeepers and the defenders. Between the New York Red Bulls and the LA Galaxy, who has the edge?
The Red Bulls. And I'm not saying that Garces doesn't make the LA Galaxy better, because Yoshida and Yamane on each side of them with their experience, it makes them even more impactful. John Nelson's done a fantastic job. The New York Red Bulls have played 3 away games in the playoffs. They've had 3 clean sheets in all of that. Cornell has stood on his head. They've been really good on set pieces. They've scored 3 set-piece goals in each of those games. So you just look at the way the Red Bulls and Cornell are playing, they have to have an edge because they've been here and done that. However, the only part to this that has me thinking about it is John McCarthy played and won an MLS Cup. And he was the MVP of that MLS Cup. And so he's going to be confident at home in that environment, but he didn't play the entire game. And so that's where this gets interesting. But if I have to give an edge, it's the Red Bulls because they haven't played at this level all year long, and they timed it perfectly. But 3 away games, 3 clean sheets, and Cornell standing on his head, I think the Red Bulls have the advantage in the moment.
John McCarthy has now played in 3 straight MLS Cups, 2 with LAFC in the last 2 years, and now with the LA Galaxy. That's absolutely wild. Sasha, for you, who wins the midfield?
This is a close one, but I'm going to give it to the LA Galaxy, and that's even without Riqui Puig. If Riqui Puig was in there, I'd say it's hands down the Galaxy. But the best player of all those midfielders, the most important player is Edwin Cerrillo. He is the glue for the LA Galaxy. He is the guy that allows everything to happen in front of him in the attack because he's the one who stays in the middle, he covers ground, he wins second balls, and he's very tidy on the ball too. 95% completion percentage this year is exactly what you need when you're a team that wants to dominate the ball and get the ball to your attackers in good spots. I like the Red Bulls midfield because they're strong, they win duels, they have a lot of energy, they cover ground, they make the game hard, but I think the Galaxy has the edge because of Cerrillo.
Kalen Carr at the attack.
Well, you look, I think this one's pretty clear, and this is one of the best attacks we've seen, I think, in some time. And you think about the balance that you guys mentioned with Peck and Paintsill and Joveljic, who is just a killer. He has no interest in going into the wide areas. He's happy to let those guys stretch the field, stay in the box. He gets his chance. He's got 5 goals already in this playoffs. And the other piece of this, and you guys mentioned it, is once they break pressure, that's where you get into trouble. And you have to remember, this field is massive. That is also a part of the home field advantage. It is huge. It plays big. I enjoyed playing that, but it was difficult because when you step at times to guys, then suddenly you're looking over your shoulder and there's just acres of yards. That's where you can see Paintsill getting in behind. Peck can beat you with the ball at his feet. He almost gets quicker with the ball at his feet, but also can stretch in behind. So I think that balance on both sides, and then that killer in Joveljic, Sash, you know him well. He wants to make his mark in this biggest of moments. I understand they don't have the same supplier, but with Puig out, but I think they're still going to be able to release Delgado, Fagundes being able to find these guys in space. And I think this is a huge advantage for LA Galaxy.
All right, that does it. That's our final This is MLS. Final thoughts? Anybody have anything they would need to say?
Ready for MLS Cup? Let's go.
Quiet. I have a question. Who's buying drinks on Saturday night?
Jill, but you're not going to chip in?
All right, if one of my former...
I have to wrangle you guys for 290 days, and I have to buy the drinks?
If one of my former teams wins on Saturday, I'll buy the drinks.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's got to be Sasha. He's got the shortest ride to the stadium.
I mean, so. Kalen, it must be nice when you played for 9 clubs in your entire career. So at some point, one of your former clubs is going to win.
He's always a winner. I like that.
Saturday night on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV, 2 MLS originals. You don't know when you're going to see this again. The New York Red Bulls looking for their first ever MLS Cup. LA Galaxy going for a historic 6th. We'll all be there with you. We can't wait. Thanks for watching This is MLS all season, and we'll see you next year.